Welcome, one and all, to my first ever challenge run, and I've decided to start out with something both simple and special to me. Dark Souls level 1. Whilst I'm getting the character done, let's get into the rules. I'm going to be completing the game at level 1 using the Pyromancer build, since that's what level the build starts at, which is very useful. Plus, Pyromancers don't have any stat requirements, and since this is my first run like this, a first soul level 1, I kinda need all the help I can get. So that's why I went with Pyromancers. I did intend to go with the Old Witch's Ring, but decided to go with the Master Key, just because, well, it's the most useful gift. Getting into the game, before we are allowed to leave the asylum, which, why wouldn't you, it's awful, there's nothing to do here, no games at all. Goddamn tragic this place is, no wonder everyone goes insane. Before we're allowed to leave, we have to meet the guard, Big Mama. We can't deal with her right now because I am not doing a fisting challenge. That can be saved for when I'm better at this. Though, for right now, all we need to do is grab our gear and also chase down a very desperately starving man who is just trying to defend himself because we ran at him and now we're running at him with an axe. We're definitely the good guys here. Now, not using our eyes or ears, we get hit by a massive boulder. Big loss. So we decide to kill the dude who did it, who just tried to also defend himself from us. Also gets a bit chattery, gets very fast, turns into a squirrel for a little bit, probably brain damage because of the boulder ramming into him. Now, finishing off the asylum, as far as equipment wise goes, we pick up our Pyromancy Flame, and it's all we'll need until we come back for the doll and the ring to help us move through the swamp. Getting into the fight with the asylum, Big Mama, I somehow forget every time that she is weak to fire. I then remember right here, and you can see the joy as I just try to spam her with it until it works. Letting go of all, concerns. For now though, let us move on and get taken by a big bird. I will let this cutscene play in its full because it reminds me when I first played the game and it's a beautiful opening.
The ancient legends, it is stated that one day an undead shall be chosen. To leave the undead asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords. Lordran.
I had to let the entire thing play out because it was just so good when I first played the game, and it's still so good now. Now I run around Firelink, talking to people, even though I kind of speed through all of it because I'm not too interested in doing any of the side quests or stuff. And after that we collect all the stuff around Firelink, which I did miss a few things, so I'll come back for those later on. And we equip the weapon that we will be keeping with for the rest of the game, which will be the Morningstar. Even though our main weapon later on will be Pyromancers, the Morningstar is very good for the first part of the game. Now we move on to the only scary bit of Undead Burg, which is this jump. This jump is horrible, and I hate it. Especially when I first started playing, because I just fell. The jump back is equally bad, but what it does get us is the Ring of Sacrifice, which will be useful later on with Seath. Or even though we will pick up a few, but this one's still useful. For now though, let us speed our way through Undead Burg, cutting down everything in our path. I will say, every time I go through the game I have to go through this area just because I have to perfect everything. Now then, let us meet a dragon, which is definitely not a drake, even though he's missing his front two limbs. And after meeting the drake, or the dragon, we meet the undead merchant, another starving man who is just trying to sell his wares. Considering we don't have anything else to sell our souls with, or use our souls for, we will be buying up a lot of his stock. Specifically, we need the residence key, the bottomless box, and the repair box, which we will be getting later on. Grabbing this bonfire, as it will be very useful later on, I then decide to snatch up some black fire bombs in case I need them, just in case. As you can see, I am absolutely failing at sneaking up on this man, and the Black Knight did not take kindly to my act of sneaking, and decided that I would much rather be dead rather than living. Not something I would have preferred, but it seems he didn't quite consider my feelings in the matter when deciding this. I then for some reason decided to repeat my previous mistake, though thankfully this time I have remembered that parrying is a thing, though still very nerve-wracking. I then promptly once again forget how to parry and get punished for it. Then get chased away to a more open area where I decide to chicken out and have to remind myself I am a pyromancer. Because, well, I have the pyromancy flame, I just forget I need it. But that's fine though, it's what this is for. I can chicken out and throw it at him, which works very well for me, because then I don't have to fight the goddamn thing. Not wanting to get hit by another boulder though, I decide to duck out of the way of the flaming barrel, and then I question whether I want to go say hello to Havel. I do not, I am very squishy and decide probably best I stay away from him. Going into the boss room, I take off the add-ons before heading off to fight the bipedal bull, because I decide, yeah, best take care of them before I go deal with him. Speeding through the fight with the reject Minotaur, because look at him, he's basically just a cross between Minotaur and possibly King Kong? King Kong's child at the very least. But speeding through that, I remember to use my Pyromancy Flame this time, unlike I did with the Black Knight. You can see me absolutely failing at guessing how far the fireballs can go in some instances, and regretting my decisions as I wonder if I'll even be able to beat the goddamn thing. Thankfully for me though, I don't let myself get defeated by it, as you will see in just a moment, as I don't try my luck with it. I don't want to get too greedy and then end up dying, but I don't end up, failing to the goddamn thing, which is good by me. I stopped say hello to Soleil, as every Dark Souls fan should, and appreciate the sun with him. Moving on to the bridge though, I then sprint as fast as I can, a sprint of desperation if you will, to avoid being turned into a human barbecue, something I would prefer not to have happen. Now because the dragon is an impatient, overgrown lizard, we wait for him to get a bit bored, and then once he does get a bit bored, he decides to come down and meet you personally. You then just run underneath him, which is awesome. However, because my brain hates me, I have to run back and go underneath the bridge. Whilst underneath it, I decide to come meet the hollows, which don't want me down there. I then also decide to meet the rats, which was a terrible idea, and only means one thing. I have to go back down there and get my revenge on the little swine, which I promptly go back to do. However, after that, I decide to make another mistake involving a Black Knight, only this one is far less forgiving, and must be compensating for something given the sword and the anger management issues. Deciding to go back for some revenge on him as well, the knight feels the need to put me in my place once again. Considering, or not, whether he has compensation issues, he at least knows how to use the greatsword. Continuing on with another bad decision, terrible one, which gives me nothing of use, I decide to go to the merchant to grab a bow and some arrows. Because I want the Drake Sword. Because of course I want the Drake Sword. I always want the Drake Sword. Even if I don't use the damn thing, I feel the need to get it. Whilst here, I also decide to grab the repair box. And if you'll see the stats on the bow, you'll understand why this is a terrible idea. Because it requires 12 decks to use. I do not have 12 decks. And so now, you can see me absolutely failing to hit the goddamn tail with the bow and arrow. And it doesn't even matter if I do hit it, because whilst here, I fire it all of my arrows. You can see the arrows go from over 100 to nothing with nothing to show for it. I spent over 12 minutes here trying to hit this goddamn thing for no goddamn reason, because as you can see, no Drake Sword at the end of it. I did go back and get a few more arrows, but still nothing at all. The Drake apparently got pissed at my decision to try to shoot its tail off and decided to call in some backup. So we got the Black Knight down here, and the Black Knight was not pleased with my trying to hurt his friend. So he decided to get back at me for that by sending me off a goddamn cliff. As you can see, takes his job very seriously. Not wanting to try my luck with the knight again, however, I decided to play fetch with a boar. Safe to say he doesn't know how to play fetch, because he kept not bringing the goddamn head back to me. So I kept having to throw more, in the vain hope, the very, very vain hope, that he will eventually learn and know to bring it up the stairs to me. Based on the fact he keeps walking into a goddamn fire though and giving himself more brain damage, I think it's fair to say he is not learning his lesson. So instead of training with him, I decided to run through the tunnels, where I have to deal with the stick figures, who don't know how to ambush someone as they don't all storm me at once and decide to go one after another. I pick up the mysterious key for Lautrec, and then have to stab the reject Black Knights, who don't know how to ambush someone or fight properly. The knight down this tunnel, however, clearly heard that insult and decided to use this Holofriend as bait in order to lure me out so they could both ambush me and show me they do know how to fight. My bad, I'll try not to do it again. Speeding my way through the rabble in order to get back to where I was, I decided to simply run past instead of trying to deal with anything again, and I also decided to run past him instead of trying to deal with him again because I don't want to get killed. Getting the gate open at the bottom in case I decide to use this area down here again, I do decide to use the stairs as a battlefield in order to fight the Hollow as well as the Knight, as well as the Knights in the Cathedral. Trying to lure them out is proving to be difficult though, so I lure them out with a good time, though here's hoping they know I meant a duel and not anything else. You know, just in case they have anything else in mind. After clearing out the cathedral, I say absolutely not to the Tower of a Man waiting over by the front, and decide to go deal with the Knight cosplayers hanging out by the side of the building. Now, I did want to go someplace a bit more friendly afterwards, so once I'm done clearing out all the pieces of trash, I decide to head down to the familiar sound of hammer hitting anvil, and the wonderfully familiar face of Andre, who you of course have to sit through his dialogue, get to meet him, get to say hello. I am, however, a bit mad at the boy, because whilst doing all this talking, he failed to remind me, and warn me, rightly, of the demon that is sitting 20 feet away. So I decided to go down there and give it a talking to. However, I don't think it enjoyed this, because it then decided to try to electrocute me multiple times and then sit on me. I was not pleased. Continuing on with the idea of meeting some friendly faces, I go say hello to the Onion Man, who's doing what I do too much of and sleeping. Though if a man in tainted robes with a morning star came to me, I'd wake up pretty fast too, or at least I'd like to hope I did, otherwise might not be waking up at all. Once I'm done with him, I decide to go conquer my fear a bit, and head back to the Tower Knight's child in order to challenge him to a duel. And I also introduce him to why wearing metal armour in a fight with a man who can throw fire at you is a terrible idea. Now I'd like to show you a slowed down representation of why support classes are actually terrifying, as these hollows can barely pick up a sword on their own, but give them a big boost, and they hit harder than some of the Black Knight rejects hanging out in the cathedral. I should really stop insulting them though, as they seem to be taking it more to heart than I expected. Especially considering the hearts probably look like shriveled up raisins at this point, considering how messed up they are and how consumed by the armour. But wanting to get some revenge, I go back and try to take a look at said art, just to see whether I'm right about it. Once I'm done with them, I head up to get Lautrec, because you of course need Lautrec. He holds something very important, which is of course the golden armour. What else could be important about him? Certainly not his attitude. But once I'm finished with him, I decide to head up and prepare for the fight ahead, and summon my inner Sekiro in order to channel some lightning into my weapon, getting ready for the absolute beating that's about to occur. I say hello to the stone golems, the stone demons, and give them a bit of time to wake up, considering it takes longer for him than actually freaking fighting me. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. They've been stuck on there for God knows how long. Yeah, some random dude comes up and all of a sudden they have to get up and start doing things for the first time in maybe 100 years. Starting out, the fight is going pretty good. Probably, I think, arguably one of my best performances with the damn thing, considering I'm avoiding getting hit, I'm getting the tail, doing some really good damage. And the only thing really holding me back at the moment in the current playthrough is my stamina, as well as my absolute horrid performance with my pyromancers. As you can see, they can notice the weakness in me, in both my stamina and pyromancers, and decide to capitalize on it. giving me more trouble than I bargained for, especially once the second one came in and decided to deal with me personally. Before I head back up to be turned into a baked potato, I head down to say hello to everyone and to rest at the Firelink Shrine to get 10 Estus. Whilst visiting, I do notice a bug on Lartrek's armour, so I decide to kick him off. Why not kick him off, kick the bug off. It's unfortunate that he also ended up falling, but I guess also takes care of the bug. However, I do notice for some reason, after my kick of kindness, he dropped his ring. So I just pick it up so I can give it back to him later on when I see him again. Going back to the cathedral, the power of the gank tries to bring me down, but I use my trap card of a narrow doorway to teach them why you should really funnel. Turns out the gank wasn't needed because it was a useless attempt anyway. But skipping past that, let's get to the successful one, where I perform much better than I believe I ever really have against them. In fact, this is probably one of my best performances, outside of taking the time to over-level, of course. I'm probably doing better here than I have normally, which did kind of encourage at the time, and still kind of encourages, the fact that the games can be a bit more engaging if you play at level 1, because it requires you to engage more with the bosses. Granted, personal opinion of course, but it is still very intriguing to think about, and offers credence to playing more so level 1. Getting to the top of the tower, however, I ring the Bell of Awakening to signal everyone in the lands that yes, you in fact can get to the top of the tower and kill some stone boys. You don't have to sit on a goddamn rock at Firelink complaining about it to every new arrival. Yes, I'm taking shots at the dude in blue down below who won't stop whining. Before we head off to the sewers, let's go around and collect and clear a few things up. First on my list of things to do is get revenge on the Headless Demon, because he showed me up in front of Andre and I can't have that. After that, I go and grab the Grass Crest Shield, as it's a simple stamina boost, everyone should get it when they can. And after that, I decide to go and fight a boss, since I want a bit of a challenge. Granted, it wasn't much of one. I couldn't hit him with the fireballs, which was a bit annoying, but either way he went down just as fast. With the butterfly dead, I decide it's time to head down, so I sweep through Capra since he was uneventful and died in the first go, and grab the Pyra since he will be useful in diversifying my Pyromancers later, along with a certain witch. Since most of the sewers are very barren of useful items, at least for this run, they're not really holding anything that can help me, I sprint through most of it, grabbing whatever I come across, and then head down to beat the boss up, which also not very hard. After that, it's time to start the long trek down Blighttown. I say long, but really, it's mostly a matter of sprinting through, and this fall helps, as it helps me get down to the bottom much faster than I expected. I grab the safety bonfire, just in case I die to Quelaag, because you never know with FromSoft bosses, they can be very tricky, but before I fight her, I head up to get my plus 10 Pyromancy, just to make sure Quailana spawns, since I'm not sure when the cutoff for her is, so I want to make sure she's there. Heading through the fog gate, I try not to let my distaste for spiders slip through and make me run away, and I also have to fight the urge to switch sides once Spider Mommy herself comes onto screen. Thankfully for me, she's far too aggressive. I can handle a bit of rough, but you take the flaming sword, and that's a bit much even for my taste. I'd rather just fight her. Getting into the fight proper though, I realise now that I had my Pyro Flame out rather than my Grass Crest Shield. A super decision, which I'm surprised didn't cost me more. But the fight goes fairly well. As I say fairly well, it's mostly just me running around and trying to avoid her, and doing a few simple attacks. The only attack I really have to avoid from her is the bomb move. Besides from that, she's really easy to fight no matter what. So long as you know her moves, you know what to avoid, and you know where to go in order to essentially not get hit. It just makes the fight long because of how large her health bar is. Whilst the bell rings, I would like to mention the lack of game audio. Due to some technical difficulties, there won't be any more in the rest of this video, unfortunately. Whilst we are here, we are going to join the Spider Coven, and by the way, if she could move, Fear Lady over Quelaag any day of the week. Also, whilst down in this cesspool, we're going to go talk to Quaylana, and I try to tell her about her sister, but says she just tries to hustle me and tries to sell me things with exorbitant prices for the souls I got from her sister. So, she's still networking, I suppose. Not wanting to throw myself into the trap hell that is Sense Fortress quite yet, I go cleanse myself after being stuck for so long down below by talking to the hulk of a man that is Andre, the best blacksmith in the series, no question. Using the time to upgrade my Morning Star in preparation for what is to come, namely the Giants and not so much the Iron Golem, since I'm not too concerned about what he will bring, more so the Giants. Getting into what I'm sure will be a pleasant experience, I avoid becoming a pincushion by avoiding the overgrown blades the swordsmen use, and instead use their own traps against them, which I'm sure left them seething. Or maybe that was the lava I threw at them. Who knows at this point. Wanting to test out my new pyromancy, I asked this man to help me, but something tells me he didn't quite enjoy being a part of my experiment. That's fine, however, because once my testing was finished up, I decided it was time to go and meet the ladies of Sense Fortress. Something also tells me, however, they were not quite as excited to meet me as I was to meet them. Possibly because I was killing all the men I came across. Also, possibly because I attacked them because they threw lightning at me. Who can really say? Letting the snake test out the boulder for me, I leave him to his bone-crushed fate. Me and I know, but needed. I then head up to meet this cobra, who tries to ask me out on a date, and when I refuse her advances, she doesn't quite take it well. Not my fault, I like aggressive, but throwing electricity is a bit much for me. After picking up the Ring of Steel Protection, which I won't be using, but is still good to have, I then go to someone I would consider a date with, a very welcoming onion boy, and whilst he is a much more loving figure and much more loving personality, the only date he really wants me to deal with, or go on, is one where I deal with his problems myself, such as taking care of the giant rolling rock, which he doesn't know how to get past. Since I do quite enjoy the Onion Man, I agree to go deal with the rock, as he just sits there and waits for me to do so. Not wanting to get myself into the same terrible fate as the man from before, I avoid being run down, and once more I try to use the fortress to my advantage, and the traps of said fortress to my advantage, by luring out this snake man. Turns out though he knows far more about this place than I do, which is understandable considering he lives here, and he avoids being penetrated by the arrows. He then decides to try to track me down for my transgressions, which is awful. Fearing him attempting to turn me into a snack, as he keeps trying to bite and eat me, I make sure to stay back here and deal with him, hitting him again and again until his scales no longer give him any more protection. Letting the giant lethal weapon that is moving far too fast go by, I fail at remembering where to jump from and take it as a sign to head down to the lift rather than up onto the walkway. Whilst I'm down here, I decide to give the fortress some pest control and deal with the hiding in plain sight mimic, which in my opinion is still to date the best placement for a mimic in any of the Souls games, especially considering the fact that you hadn't seen one up until this point, which only makes its reveal all the more haunting, if you will. Whilst I'm waiting for the lift, I decide to go grab my favourite item in the game, well, one of my favourites, as I do tend to farm humanity whenever I play the game, and the Serpent Ring always helps in that manner. Whilst waiting for the lift to come up, I have to recollect that I can't stay on it too long, otherwise I will be crushed by the spikes and turned into a patty. Now remembering that I can't open that, I decide to head up there and turn the boulders away to a more favourable position. Namely, in order to grab the sorcerer for later, even though I won't be using him, it's just part of my brain that I have to grab him. Since I missed it before, I head back down to the walkway, in order to make sure I don't miss anything of use. Granted, there won't be much of use down here, namely just the souls, the gear, as well as the ring later on. But turns out I won't even get the chance to grab said ring, due to the fact that I am awful at this game at some times, and end up simply just slipping. I wasn't even needed to fight the dude at that point, he didn't even kill me. Getting back up, I decided to simply leave the area where it was and head further up into the fortress, where I fight more snake men, to be expected considering this is their home and they are guarding it. where I guess they would act more like soldiers than civilians, considering their training and the fact some of them use lightning, specifically the ladies. I wonder if it's specifically a lady thing, or if the snakes are just sexist. Who knows? Becoming far too claustrophobic trapped within this giant death trap, I make my way outside, where I'm greeted to the wonderful sight of the dull greys and browns of the immaculate castle walls. I say immaculate, but considering its crumbling state, along with the fact that its people that are patrolling this area are bipedal snakes, rotting knights, or barely dressed giants, safe to say the smell would probably put anyone off even before they entered the front door. Thankfully for our undead, considering their shriveled up nose, I highly doubt that he can smell at all. Heading down to grab the ring from below, as my brain refuses to let me leave it behind even if I won't use it, this knight attempts to stop me, and also is very mad that I tried to parry him. Thankfully for me, he does not do a good job protecting his back, and I have a plethora of Estus to swallow, at least until this moment. Grabbing the ring, I head back up and try to deal with the giant's bomb that he's throwing. Not knowing where it's going to be, of course, I have to be careful when heading up here, and try to bait him out to which one he's going to throw it at. Thankfully for me, he throws it to the lower section, allowing me to go down and grab the bonfire. Something I rather desperately needed, considering my lack of Estus and considering the fact I needed to repair my gear, not wanting it to break during the fight with the Iron Golem, who isn't a hard fight, but when you have broken equipment, it becomes a lot more difficult. Picking up the souls, I then head over to greet the twin of the knight I killed before. I try to tell him that I killed his brother, by doing the same to him. He doesn't appreciate it, but thankfully for me I have a lot more working for me this time, namely a giant ball of lava I can throw. Unfortunately, this place is not nearly as open as a courtyard, and this Tower Knight twin decides to show me just why he's better and why he was put in a much higher position. Namely, he's much better at defending things than his brother. Not wanting to be rained down upon with bombs, I go deal with the giant up ahead, before heading out to fight the giant golem for the first time. It's safe to say whilst the Iron Golem isn't a hard fight, it is very much still a From Software fight. So it's best not to get careless like I was doing, which led to a grab, which led to my death. Not wanting to let that slide, however, I immediately run back for him. Considering I already picked up everything along the way towards him, such as getting the cage key and freeing the sorcerer, which I didn't feel the need to show off considering sorcery is kind of useless to me this playthrough, along with any amount of souls I may build up, hence the loss of souls isn't nearly as tragic as it would be normally. Getting closer, I deal with this dude who is far too good at his job, despite the fact he is missing there, he typically does very well. Getting back into the Iron Golem fight, I did notice one thing during my last run through, which was the fact that throwing lava at his feet does tend to deal with his standing ability quite a bit. Whilst it isn't quite enough to send him off the railing, I keep one of the Chaos Fireballs in reserve in order to weaken his stance more later on in the fight. Granted, planning isn't strictly needed when dealing with the Iron Golem, but you should head into every fight knowing at least one strategy to deal with them. Granted, there are some outliers to this, such as Pinwheel. The only thing you need to know to deal with Pinwheel is how to press R1, maybe R2 if you're feeling spicy. The Iron Golem goes down again, which is good for me because that essentially means he's dead already. Considering how long he stays on the floor for, I don't really have to worry about a retaliation, though do create some distance just in case he decides to act up and try to grab me again. But with that done, I head over to the Spiraling Circle and let this cutscene play out, because it is one of the best in the series, and somewhat unmatched. Granted, a bit diminished by the lack of audio, but its presence is still felt, even without it. with that cutscene over, it marks the end of part 1 of the two-parter. So next time I will be tackling the DLC as well as the other half of the game. Here's hoping it doesn't get too hard from there. With that said, like, share, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff. I will see you all later, and have a wonderful day.